He had everything going for him: good looks, a future in medicine, and the perfect fiancée. How does a perfect man with a perfect future go from planning a wedding to hunting for victims on Craigslist? This is the story of Philip Markoff, the Craigslist killer, the monster who hid in plain sight. And we are Evidence Obscured, the place where we uncover the cases that others won't touch. We go where the rest are afraid to go, and we lay it out straight, no matter how gruesome or uncomfortable the conversation might get. If that's the kind of coverage you're looking for, you've come to the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss any new cases. And now, let's get into the case of Boston's most unexpected killer. It all started with the assault on Tricia Leffler in the swanky Westin Copley Hotel in Boston on April the 10th, 2009. The 29-year-old escort chose this hotel for her services because the higher price meant that her customers were less likely to be dangerous. The reason she was taking extra precautions was because she advertised on Craigslist, where any Tom, Dick, and Harry could contact her. The man that arrived was well-spoken, handsome, and had no red flags to speak of. But the moment the door closed behind them, he flipped a switch. He pulled out a gun, told her to get on her stomach, tied her up with zip ties, and gagged her with duct tape. He then went through her purse, taking $800, a cell phone, and her debit and credit cards. He then removed his contact details from her phone and deleted any messages between them that he could find. He also took Tricia's underwear as a souvenir before he left.
He picked up a pair of my underwear that were on the floor and put them in his pocket.
Luckily, he did not sexually assault Tricia or seriously injure her, but his methodology was, well, strange. He put on gloves, but repeatedly took them off to rummage through her purse, or when he needed more mobility to snip the telephone wires. The gloves were ill-fitting, so he definitely didn't think that part through, and he touched just about every surface in that crime scene. And cutting the phone lines or tying her to the doorknob to buy some time wasn't very effective either. The second he stepped out of the room, Tricia managed to get loose and raise the alarm. Why bother with gloves when you're not going to keep them on and you don't bother to cover your face? Every CCTV camera in that hotel caught him clear as day. So there was some planning from the perp, but not a lot of preparation apparently. And this is a point that I need you to keep in mind going forward. This guy was a conundrum, and when you find out who he was, the oddities continue to pile up. Unlike most serial assaulters, he doesn't fit any specific box or profile. He doesn't have a cool down period, and his background doesn't fit the typical environment for violence to thrive. But he does check one box. Like all violent offenders, he escalates. Tricia was the lucky one because she was the first. His next attack came just 4 days later on the 20th floor of the Copley Marriott Hotel. A woman heard what sounded like a scream and gunshots coming from the room next to hers. When she looked out of her door, 25-year-old Julissa Brisman was lying in a pool of blood in the hallway. She was pronounced dead an hour later at the hospital. Police combed the scene. The killer had gotten one zip tie around one of Julissa's wrists, and that's where she began to fight back. He pistol whipped her, and when she didn't go down, he shot her twice in the chest and once in the stomach. Before he fled the scene, he stole her credit cards, whatever cash she had in her purse, and her phone. Just like before, this guy walked past CCTV like he didn't care that the cameras would catch him. Tricia identified him immediately. The tall, handsome blonde man was the one who attacked her too. Julissa was also a sex worker who advertised her services on Craigslist. Police were now very alarmed. The crimes were too similar to ignore, and the attacker had now escalated to murder shockingly fast. You'd think they'd have an easy time identifying him, given that he made no attempt to obscure his face and that he didn't do a very good job of avoiding his prints being all over the hotel rooms. But his prints were nowhere in any system they ran it through, and with thousands of people swarming into the city for the Boston Marathon, he essentially disappeared into the crowd. The papers caught wind of the back-to-back attacks, and they had an absolute field day with the story that they nicknamed the Craigslist Killer. Police barely cleared the crime scene before he struck again. Just 2 days passed before another woman was attacked. This woman requested to remain anonymous, but the papers and news outlets didn't respect her privacy at all. I will not be as tasteless as the rest, so I'll avoid as much identifying information as I can. Jane Doe was 65 miles away in Warwick, Rhode Island. She'd booked in a mid-range price hotel, the Holiday Inn Express Hotel, and she also had a slightly different setup than the others. It would be those set-in-stone procedures that would ultimately save her life. Jane was an exotic dancer that offered private dances on the side, which she advertised on Craigslist. Her husband would drive her to the location and wait in the lobby for her. Once she and the client met, she would send him a text. As soon as the appointment was done, she'd text him again. If he didn't receive both of those texts, he would go to the booked room and intervene. The killer didn't bank on the girl having extra protection with her. The moment she entered the room, he pulled out a gun and zip-tied her wrist. She was completely compliant and described the blonde man as being extremely nervous while he went through her purse. Meanwhile, the husband downstairs was heading up because he hadn't received a text from his wife yet, and she wasn't answering any of his calls. When he burst into the room, the blonde man inside pointed a gun at him. The husband tripped as he was backing away from the firearm, and that's when the killer took the opportunity to skedaddle. By the time police were made aware of this third attack, they'd finally caught up. They'd collected the previous two victims' digital communication with the perpetrator, the numerous images of him on CCTV, witness and staff reports, and, most damning of all, the killer's email address. That email gave them the IP address that belonged to the email, giving them his personal address. It was registered to Philip Markoff, and the revelation was nothing short of confusing. Of all the people in the world, Markoff was an extremely atypical individual to be considered in the suspect pool. Markoff was a 23-year-old med student studying at Boston University and currently renting an apartment in Quincy. He came from a good family of professionals, was a member of 5 different clubs in high school, and was engaged to a beautiful girl who was also studying medicine. They looked like Ken and Barbie, the perfect, beautiful couple heading straight for success. Markoff literally had everything going for him and no previous signs of violence or any unstable mannerisms. It wasn't just that he was handsome and had this great future ahead of him, he was brilliant too. Unlike other med students that struggle to stay on top of their colossal workloads, Markoff seemingly took to his studies with ease. He graduated with honors a year ahead of his class. Everyone reported that he and his fiancée were the sweetest people they knew, kind, sociable, and by all appearances, the kind of people that deserved every bit of success that came their way.
It was one night and we were coming home and he walked me to the door like a lot of guy friends will do, and he just, at the entrance to the dorm, he shoved me up against a wall and tried kissing me, and I couldn't physically overpower him to get him off. It was really scary because I was fighting against him and saying, "No, Phil, what are you doing?" And thankfully, one of our other friends came up and had to pull him off of me.
Understandably, police were hesitant to make an arrest, even though they had more than enough virtual evidence to warrant one. Hell, the man didn't even have a parking ticket to his name. Nothing about him or his past had any of the usual indicators that he could possibly be a budding serial killer. The papers were right about the attacks being alarming in that regard. These attacks had all the ingredients for a serial murderer, and police knew it. They surveilled Markoff for a few days, getting enough footage to show the victims. It was Trisha that positively identified him as her attacker. Police now had irrefutable justification to arrest him, and they were just in time too. With the intense media focus on the case and his last victim and her husband having seen him, Markoff tried to take his fiancée to Connecticut. He told her that he was taking her for a weekend away, when in fact, he had $1,600 and a fake ID hidden in the car. Clearly, he was never planning on going back to Boston. Police arrested him just minutes before his car crossed state lines. When they cuffed him, he was wearing the same shoes that he wore the night he killed Julissa. Her blood was splattered all over them. Everyone that knew Philip Markoff jumped at his defense, refusing to believe a word of his guilt. His parents, brother, fiancé, and her parents, not to mention dozens of classmates and friends, spoke to the press, wrote letters to the judge, and did everything they could to tell the world that the police had it all wrong, that there had been a terrible mistake here. It just couldn't be their Phil who done these horrendous things. But no amount of love and trust could override the clear truth in front of them when it came out what police had found inside his apartment was hidden inside a book on anatomy. Bullets that matched those that killed Jaleesa and Trisha's underwear, and a pair of underwear that belonged to a fourth victim that police never knew about because she never reported being attacked. The burner phone and his computer were even more telling. He had multiple email addresses that he used to connect with sex workers on Craigslist and already had other women in communication to set up more attacks. Then there were the many sites he visited that catered to kinks that all involved bondage and torture. After a little more digging, they found out that there was a financial reason for the robberies after all. Markoff had $150,000 worth of debt and a bit of a gambling problem to boot. But don't go thinking that he committed the robberies because he wanted to get out of debt. He could have gotten much more money from robbing a liquor store. Trisha had $800 in her purse, but the other women only had small bills and change. You can hardly call that a jackpot. He was completely in this for the thrill. Psychopaths often engage in calculated risk-taking and high-stakes activities for stimulation. First, he stole money and valuables from his fiancée, parents, and friends. When he got away with that, he moved on to gambling. After a while, the gambling wasn't scratching that itch anymore, so he moved on to more tangible targets. Vulnerable women in the sex industry who were unlikely to report the attacks. He took souvenirs like serial killers are known to do, and he spent a great deal of time with his communications with these women, reveling in the deception. Then there's the fact that he was so incredibly brazen with his attacks. It's like he felt that he was above detention, that not even security cameras would be able to identify him. He chose places that had many occupants, many cameras, and many witnesses, further heightening that tantalizing danger he so desperately needed. Julissa died because she fought back, but it was just a matter of time before he went into the next hotel room with every intention of killing whoever he lured there before he even arrived. There is no way that a guy who was as intelligent as Markoff could possibly think he could get away with this if his face, fingerprints, DNA, and a damning digital footprint was out for the world to see. The only explanation for his audaciously open attacks is that he thought he was above the law, that the rest of the world was too stupid to possibly suspect a brilliant deceptor like him. Again, all indicative of a psychopath. He pleaded not guilty to charges of murder, robbery, and kidnapping.
How do you plead to this indictment, sir? Not guilty.
The university expelled him, and with all of the evidence against him, his fiancée, his friends, and his family all finally accepted the truth. Friendly Phil, who was destined for greatness, was a creep, a killer, and a gambling addict. Everyone in his life cut off contact with him and were absolutely devastated by his actions. Before he could stand trial on August the 15th, 2010, the day after he would have gotten married, Philip Markoff's body was found inside his cell. He'd used a knife fashioned from a pen and a piece of scrap metal to cut the major arteries in his neck, ankles, wrists, and legs. Then he wrote the pet names he and his former fiancée had for each other on the wall in his own blood and surrounded himself with photos of them together. Finally, to make sure that he truly would be beyond saving, he swallowed toilet paper to block his air passage so that doctors wouldn't be able to revive him after he stopped breathing, and tied a plastic bag over his head. At least he put his medical studies to good use by making sure he was well and truly beyond revival. He denied the victims and their families to get closure, to see him officially be found guilty. He denied everyone the knowledge of a motive. His family still cannot understand why he did what he did. He has a good enough support system to help him out of his gambling addiction, and his debts weren't so astronomical that he wouldn't be able to pay off eventually. But no amount of questions or soul searching could explain how a seemingly normal, highly intelligent, and well-liked guy could have been hiding this darkness within himself so successfully for 23 years. Whatever was truly going on in Markoff's head, we'll never really know. Some say he cracked under the pressure of being a medical student and keeping up appearances as a good boy all these years, and that his brain just sought unpredictable danger because it overloaded. I am not one of those people. Markov was always dark inside. No human being, no matter how much stress they're under, can get off on dominating, frightening, and capturing vulnerable women without being a true monster inside. He was a serial killer in the making. It's as simple as that. No matter how nice appearances were, there was always something on the inside that wasn't right. It was only a matter of time. But maybe you have some other insight that'll change my mind. You know the drill, guys. Leave your thoughts in the comments, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one, people. Cheers.